Hey guys, this is John. I hope you're all doing well. All right, it's late July 2026 as I'm recording this video. It's the dog days of summer. It's been very hot here. I've also been quite busy recently with all good stuff. So I haven't posted in a few weeks, but I couldn't miss creating a recap for the Naroditsky Memorial, the first annual Naroditsky Memorial, which took place at the beginning of this month, July 3rd through 5th in Charlotte, North Carolina. I could talk probably for an hour straight about this event because it was truly memorable and a great way to honor Daniel Naroditsky. Again, it's going to be an annual event, so this is the first of hopefully many, many to come. I'll try to keep that short, though. I just wanted to thank the organizers right off the top here. The Charlotte Chess Center, they did a phenomenal job. This event, even though it was very sad, the circumstances in which it brought all of us together was top-notch, and it really felt like a chess reunion to me. I saw so many legends of the game, guys like Sindarov, who actually won 2 of the events here, Vasily Ivanchuk, Boris Gelfand, Hikaru Nakamura was there. A number of creators were there too, which we're going to talk about in this video. I saw so many of you guys there, actually. Lots of viewers came up to me as I was kind of mingling around in between rounds and whatnot and just spectating. Had some great conversations. I ran into people I hadn't seen in chess in 20 years who have been out of the game for a while and wanted to come and just pay their respects to Danya and kind of be in communion with fellow chess players. So I really, really appreciated that aspect of this event. Thanks again to Charlotte for making this happen. Everyone who donated to the Naroditsky Memorial Fund, everyone who watched this too, many of you guys at home followed this event very closely. So it was great. Members of Daniel's family were there as well. I'll maybe get to that towards the end. So awesome, awesome event. I can't wait to come back next year. So we're going to talk about the Creator Invitational in this tournament, but maybe just a couple words leading up to the Creator Invitational. So there were 3 events in this one. There was a rapid tournament, a blitz tournament, and then this Creator Invitational. The rapid tournament was 10+5. That was the time control. It took place on July 3rd, which I think was a Friday. Yeah, a Friday. I played in that event, and I didn't do very well. I was pretty disappointed in my performance. I believe I scored 4 out of 9, and I didn't play any higher-rated players, I think. I played 2 or 3 title players, but no higher rateds. So to score 4 out of 9 and really to suffer from issues that have plagued me in the past, many of which you guys have seen in series like not climbing the rating ladder, using the clock as a weapon, where I'm using too much time and really doubting myself. That's what I did in the rapid tournament, 10+5. And I kind of had a hard time with the time control, interestingly. Maybe it was just not having played very much with that specific time control, but I couldn't quite figure out if I was coming or going, if I had time to think, because it was a little deceptive, you know. You think, 10 minutes, I can think for a minute or two, and 5-second increment, that's pretty generous. But no, this stuff always goes faster than you think. So long story short, I did not perform nearly up to my expectations at 10+5, even as a semi-retired player. I have high expectations for myself, and I know what I'm capable of. And I gave myself like a C- for that event. It was really, really poor. Now, July 4th was a Saturday. That was the day of the Blitz event. And by the way, Javakir Sindarov, congrats to him. He won both the Blitz and the Rapid events. Really, really impressive. So I had decided in advance of the Naroditsky Memorial that I was not going to play the Blitz event. I wanted to take that off because I knew I was playing the Rapid and I knew I was playing the Creator Invitational. I thought 3 days of back-to-back-to-back pretty intense chess against high-quality opposition would be a bit much for me to perform the way I wanted to perform. And I think that turned out to be a good decision, actually, because when we got to the Creator Invitational, I just had this feeling pretty early in the tournament that my opposition was a little sluggish because I think all of them had played both events. So they were coming off a full day of 11 rounds of Blitz. in many of them against great competition. And I do think that affected their play the next day. Whereas I was able to take things easier. I slept in a little bit that day. I actually spectated some of the games, had a couple nice meals. I was really not rushed at all. I went to a fireworks show that night in downtown Charlotte, which was amazing. And I know many of you are probably fast forwarding through this. I wouldn't blame you at all for just going to the first round here because we're going to recap each game. But I mention this stuff because the higher you go in chess and the more competitive you get in chess, even if you're thinking of playing your first tournament or something, I do believe your psychological state and understanding what will put you in the best position to perform is extremely important. As important or more than the actual chess moves that you can expect to play in your games. So I wanted to give you a little insight into how I was approaching this event and what I was thinking about during the tournament itself. So yeah, I had that nice reprieve the day before the event. I wasn't coming off 11 rounds of high pressure blitz the day before. The downside is you might say, well, you know, maybe your competitors were playing themselves into shape, whereas you're coming in cold, but that didn't turn out to matter whatsoever. What else? So leading up to the event, I didn't do much preparation at home before the event. However, the pairings for the Creator Invitational, I think they came out late the night before on July 4th. So I knew who I was going to play and in what round and what color the night before. I think I knew what color. Or was it we didn't know which color? I'm already forgetting. I was one of the oldest players in the field, so I'm allowed to forget sometimes. But anyways, I probably did about maybe 10 minutes of preparation per opponent, just in that short period of time from when the pairings were announced to when we started play the next morning. So I had a general idea of what I could expect my opponents to play, but it wasn't anything in depth. I was mostly looking to try to get comfortable positions and play stuff that was either in my wheelhouse or, as it turns out, in some games, might be a bit of a surprise to my opponent. That was just my general game plan in this 10-player round robin 3+2 blitz tournament. You can't do too much. You don't want to tire yourself out with preparation, especially in a blitz and rapid tournament. And I wouldn't recommend doing too much preparation in general, even for those of you who play classical or lone wolf. You can prepare all day in chess. You can always go down a rabbit hole and find reasons to prepare for hours and hours. At some point, you're going to have to play the game, and very likely, very, very likely, it's not going to go the way that you prepared. So there is an art to knowing when to cut it off. And yeah, I probably averaged 10 minutes of prep for each opponent in this one, just getting a general gist of their repertoire. Okay, now the main factor I had in mind coming into this tournament, I talked about the rest, a little bit of preparation. I was armed with a couple opening surprises too. But the main thing I had in mind, this is going to sound super simple because I seem to stress this in every using the clock as a weapon video I make. I wanted to stay even or ahead of my opponents on the clock. I wanted to just play fast as a primary objective. I know I have good instincts in chess. I do trust my instincts, but sometimes I just can't get my hand to play the move, which, you know, that's a bit of cope, actually. That means I'm not trusting my instincts. So I wanted to just, like they say in boxing, just let my hands fly, play the move that comes to mind if it looks reasonable, not try to read too much into what's going on the board. Just make reasonable moves, good enough moves. If you consistently make good enough moves that are fast, you're going to do well in a blitz format. And let me tell you, 3+2, that 2-second increment in an over-the-board tournament, you can pretty much kiss that goodbye. In my head, I was treating that like it was 3+0, because that's pretty much the cost of just physically making the move. You got to account for that. So I was trying to treat it like a 3+0 game, maybe 3+1 if we're approximating it to something online. And if you watched Title Tuesday before, boy, that increment goes fast. And that too, I think just having that in the forefront of my brain at all times during this event was very helpful. Okay, so these were all things I was thinking about going into the tournament. Making sure I was rested, preparing a little bit, but not over preparing, having a couple opening ideas in mind, and play fast, be practical. That's what I wanted to hit the ground running with in this tournament. So let's get into the chess itself. So you see the field up here. I could click and show you the final standings, but it might be a bit of a spoiler. But yeah, we had quite a few notable creators. I won't go through everyone. It's kind of pointless to do that. Many of you know everyone here. Oh, I should mention, in my head going into this tournament, I thought Aman Hambleton was probably the slight favorite. He actually beat Javakir Sindarov in the Blitz tournament. And remember, Sindarov went on to win the whole thing. So Aman just kind of came in and beat Sindarov. And I think he's a 3,000-ish Blitz player on chess.com. Probably the most active of the players here too. So I thought Aman was the favorite. And then as far as other players who had a great shot to win this event, I thought Eric Rosen, Levy Rozman, and myself were all in the mix as well. And each of us had a very good chance too. Eric Rosen, just to highlight him, he did very well in the Blitz tournament as well. So he scored 7 out of 11. And I think if he had got to 7.5, he would have made the Blitz final, which was played after the Creator Invitational. It was a knockout tournament. He very nearly made that Blitz final with a number of other players as well. So it seemed to me like he had pretty good form. Levy is always dangerous. I think he's an excellent Blitz and Rapid player, just a good player overall, but I think he especially thrives at those short time controls. And I know myself, I know what I'm capable of. I wanted to win this event. I was not coming here just to play this event. I thought one of the best ways I can honor my friend Daniel is show my best chess here. And I came in motivated to do that. So yeah, and there's other players too. Danny Rensch played, Sagar Shah, Dina Belenkaya. She ended up having a great result too. But I just wanted to give you the favorites I was thinking about in my head. Okay, so let's go round by round. I'll try to keep this short for each round because we have 9 games to get through. Spoiler alert, I went 9 for 9 in this tournament. I guess I could have waited to say that, but this tournament was played over 3 weeks ago at this point. I'm probably going to slip up and say it at some point anyways. So it was one of my most memorable results ever. Let's see how it unfolded. Okay, so round 1, I'm playing Sagar Shah of ChessBase India fame. Very nice guy. I loved talking with him, meeting him for the first time. So, first round jitters. I think we were both a little nervous in this game. Not necessarily reflected in the chess, but just the body language. They're announcing everyone at the start, and you're sitting there waiting for the clocks to get hit so you can start playing chess. So Sagar played a King's Indian attack formation, and I just played something very simple. In this first game especially, I wasn't trying to do too much. I just played this sort of reversed Tory attack. I think Sagar might have had a bit of preparation here, but pay attention to the clocks as we go through these games. That was the number one thing in my head. Like I said, it dictated a lot of the decision making. So, okay, he plays for e4. We got a bunch of trades, which was fine by me. Probably moves like this. I'm going to assume that these are more or less accurate, these timestamps, but even knight f6, I probably shouldn't spend too much time. That's very natural. Hit the rook, defend my bishop. This game was fine for Sagar up until a certain point. Okay, so here, yeah, and actually he's ahead on the clock and I'm falling behind. So I'm already disobeying my number one maxim. So I remember some games in this setup where after queen b3, if black were to defend the pawn with queen c7, white can play this annoying move knight d2. So maneuver out of the way of black ever capturing that knight and preparing knight c4. Because the bishop that white would really like to get here is black's dark square bishop. Black has arranged pawns on light squares predominantly, in the center and on the queen side kind of. So if white could get that dark square bishop, that would be very helpful. So I think I made a good practical decision here. I actually took Sagar's knight right when he released this pin. I took his knight and only then played queen c7. And I thought in my head, okay, definitely white is somewhat better here with the two bishops, but I don't mind playing with a bishop and a knight or two knights in a blitz game. And he doesn't have that easy knight d2 to c4 plan. I get to keep my dark square bishop safe. And he pushed the A pawn. I blocked him. I'm still kind of crouching in my light square setup here. I felt pretty comfortable here, even though I knew the engine was going to say I was worse. So maneuver, knight d5, hit the bishop, centralizing. And he's starting to spend a little more time. Now he goes c4. I play knight f6. I thought about playing knight e7 here, actually, because if c5 I could take, and his bishop on d2 would hang. But it looked a little too fancy, so I played knight f6 instead. Bishop c3, knight d7, I pivot back, some maneuvering going on, and now I play e5. And when I played this break, there was definitely a bit of a shift, and I felt Sagar maybe losing a bit of momentum or kind of losing the thread of the position. Yeah. And I haven't looked at these games more or less since they were played. So this is interesting for me to recall too. So yeah, he went from 125 down to 47 seconds here. And I think he was debating the various ways in which this position might open up, which should be favorable for him with the bishop pair. But it proved to be more loosening for him than me. So he played c5. I retreated the bishop back to f8, b4. So he's still staking out territory. And we get a trade, and then I play knight e5. And here I was very happy, especially given being behind on the clock early and, maybe being slightly worse. I'm hitting the bishop on f3, and I'm hitting the bishop on d4. So I actually think, before we see what happened, I think probably he had to improve somewhere here. I was thinking in the game maybe queen f5 somewhere might be helpful. That seems like a natural move to consider with me just having weakened that square. Maybe c5 itself is not too bad, but I was pretty happy to see that move, all told. Maybe we can just flip the engine on. I'm just going to use the engine very selectively. Yeah, it gives d5 as well. c5 maybe not a bad idea. Yeah, even here, he's not so much worse. But I was able to play a fairly easy sequence with this trade and then knight e5. Maybe here, yeah, I think I'm recalling this now. I think here he probably should have inserted rook takes e8, if I recall. Yeah, rook takes e8. So if he voluntarily gave the file, then when he takes on d4, at least knight e5 is only going to hit the light square bishop and not the dark square bishop as well. And it looks like a very minimal advantage, but it looks like he would have been able to keep the bishop pair. But instead, we got this position. I played knight e5, and same thing. It just seemed like he was kind of demoralized already this early in the game, objectively. There's still a lot of chess to be played, but yeah, he took and then took again, and suddenly I'm very active down both files, and I'm hitting the rook on a1. He came over to dispute the d file, and we got a trade. But I had seen in advance I could play this move queen c3. And I thought already he has massive problems because I'm getting into the underbelly of his queenside structure, and he's got to watch his bishop here. So, yeah, I think probably around here, he already has to be careful. Maybe taking with the bishop was his original intention, but that too runs into queen e1 check, which loses a pawn. So that too runs into problems with the pawn structure. So yeah, just in a fast time control situation here, I already don't like the trend of this for white, starting with how the tension was released here and having to give up the bishop pair. Yeah, probably, I'm going to guess rook takes e5 is where things start to go astray. Yeah, after that, it's already better for black. So a few too many exchanges there for Sagar. And I think once I get the queen to c3, if white is going to hold this, it's going to be some very unpleasant opposite color bishop ending where he's down a pawn or two. So yeah, he played bishop h5 here. I decided to throw in g6. before I did anything with those pawns. And now I took, and my thinking was, yeah, I'm on all these pawns. I'm also defending b7, and I'm eyeing up the bishop too, just in case the queen tries to activate herself as well. Yeah, and here he went queen d7. I see a line here with bishop c8. This is just Lee chess auto analysis stuff. But after queen d7, I scooped up another pawn. My king is quite safe, actually. And I have queen e1 in mind, too. And he has seconds left here. Notice I still have 40-some seconds. Yeah, and it registers white losing on time. But there were a few more moves here played. I took the bishop. I did make sure that there were no stalemate tricks, because with this construction here, white having no legal pawn moves, there's almost a stalemate, but he always has king h4. So I just made a point to make sure white always has that move. Okay, so yeah, things I think started to go astray for him after this series of exchanges. It happened very quickly. Some nerves from both sides, I would say. But I'm happy that I kept my nerves and was just able to play kind of straightforward chess. I think that bishop takes f3 decision was a good one in this one, practically speaking, to keep the dark square bishop. Maybe a motif to remember. So, yeah, and just sort of a more complicated middle game where if white's going to keep an edge here, it's maybe something a little more sophisticated. Yeah, d5. I think that's natural, too. Maybe he didn't like this. But here, too, apparently, white can hold on to a little something, even if they lose the c4 pawn. Okay, so I pick up this first win. One final thing I wanted to check. I thought white had some tiny chances here, objectively. Yeah, king g2, the computer says here, king g2, which is a natural move, I'd say. Get the king up to protect the bishop, and then immediately activate the queen. I guess white can afford to lose 2 pawns, but yeah, I think in a blitz game, that's just not realistic, even if this might hold somehow. Yeah, probably bishop c8 features in somewhere, but hard to find in a blitz game. All right, so I win the first game as black. Really nice. Once I got that win under my belt, it was off to play the next round. The next rounds were the rounds were pretty bang bang. There was 5 to 10 minutes in between, and then there was a slightly longer break after round 5. But I was playing Danny Rensch in the next game. So Danny and we played a lot over the years. Not much recently, but some of the viewers of my channel, you may remember our brawls that we used to play against each other. You can still find them on my channel. They're probably 8, 9, 10 years old at this point. So Danny actually had a pretty good result in this tournament. Shout out to him. Thinking about playing against Danny, I think he plays well in messier positions where he has momentum. I think that's where Danny is at his best. I think he's a little less confident when he's on the defensive. That's true for most players. But also, if you can get him into some sort of technical position where maybe there's a couple tactics, but he's not the one who's able to have the fun in the position, I think that's where I've been able to exploit his play style in the past. But broadly, I was just thinking, okay, historically, I have good results against Danny. I do well sticking to my usual style, trying not to take too much risk. Let's see if I can get him in these kind of play for 2 results type positions. So we played a Queen's Indian defense, as it turned out. I thought he might go for c5 here. I did have something in mind against his c5 because he was playing that earlier in the Blitz and Rapid tournament. But he played for this Queen's Indian defense. I went for, in my mind, the most challenging variation, which is this fianchetto line. And then he played a very early knight e4 in this game. The main line is just a castle. But he made a brief comment afterwards that he thought there was some theory to avoid. I do know after castles, there is this line with d5, this pawn sacrifice. I was actually not going to play this line, but there is some stuff that black does have to know if they're going to play this way. So yeah, he played knight e4, and I guess this move just isn't very good, because I remember after the game looking at it, And knight fd2 is a move to play right away to try to take advantage of that bishop on b7. I think both Danny and I were assuming that knight takes d2, bishop takes b7, knight takes f1 was going to be better for, or at least equal for black. But I guess that's not the case at all. Maybe we just miscounted because black's knight is actually trapped here. And my bishop might get trapped, but I think it takes black longer to corral it. So yeah, I think I could have played knight d2, knight f to d2 specifically right away here. And maybe Danny would have played d5 or knight d6, something like that. Knight d6 might actually run into c5 even. But anyways, I played rook e1 thinking I was going to prepare knight fd2, which is what I did on the next move when he castled, thinking, well, now if he takes on d2, I can take b7, and there's no issues with knight takes f1. That was the thought process. So Danny played f5, and I got to take and double up his pawns, and then I played d5, cutting off his bishop. Very common motif, happens a lot. I did see that he had some counterplay against f2 here. So rook and bishop firing away here. I think this next sequence was like roughly calculated by me in advance of playing this way with the trade and then d5. So rook e2. It looks momentarily a little dodgy for me because I'm completely banking on trying to win his e4 pawn. My bishop's firing at it now. If he were to defend it with something like queen f5 or queen g6, I can enlist my knight as well. But I did mention to Danny after the game, he played d6 here. I thought perhaps taking on d5 and bishop a6 was a way to go. I did see that in advance again. I thought rook d2 here. It looked awkward, but I think the computer said maybe there was something here. Bishop b4 is... Ooh, yeah, this was the thing. Okay. So I'm certain I would not have done this in the game, but you can see from the engine, the top three moves are actually all to give the exchange here. So knight c3, for example, letting black take and then taking back. And I guess white has excellent play because they're going to scoop the pawn and white has a mobile center. Probably hard for those rooks to get in the game. Maybe the bishop's awkward if black ever plays d6, kind of stuck outside the pawn chain. I'm 98, 99% sure I would not have done that. I think I would have played rook d2 here. And I think I checked to make sure stuff like bishop takes e3 wasn't working. Yeah, there's no checkmate down here because I've got my queen guarding. But yeah, that was a possibility, and maybe Danny should have gone for that. I think he just wasn't looking in that direction with the trade and then bishop a6, but this could have been interesting. Something along these lines. Yeah, maybe throw bishop d3 in somewhere now that I can't go win the pawn with my knight. Here too, maybe I would have had to sack an exchange at some point. Probably not right away. But I think that's what he should have done on a practical level because he played d6 here, probably not wanting to burn too much time because look at the clocks too. This one I'm actually up on the clock about 45 seconds and growing. And when he played d6, I saw that e4 pawn was almost surely a goner. And I can take my time taking it because, yeah, I've got two attackers on it and he can't defend. So I was able to go up a pawn and fork queen and bishop in the process. This next stage of the game, okay, I'm just making some trades, strengthening the center, trying to shut down some of his counterplay as well. I think I do misplay this a little bit at some point. I trade off my bishop for the knight. Not sure that was necessary. And I played f4. He goes h5, probably doing the right thing, trying to drum up some counterplay on the king side. Look at the time, though. So I'm up the pawn. I'm up 50 seconds on the clock. Just keep the pedal pressed to the floor here, is what I was thinking. e5, rook d7. I defend this pawn on d5 multiple times. He goes rook a d8. Now I take on a4. He takes on d5, and this is a nice little sequence that would have been very satisfying to execute in this game. I played bishop h3 here. This was my intention, I think, going into this sequence. Turns out I could have actually taken on d5, which obviously I was looking at. I thought this would have led to a trade, right? But if you saw in advance the problem with this trade, I was only looking at stuff like queen c4 and queen b3, which I think black can cover. Like queen c4 can be met by c6, for instance, maybe even queen e6. But I missed that there's queen a8 check, this fork of the king and the rook. So that's a little hard to anticipate from a few moves back, kind of a weird geometrical thing. And you wouldn't think queen a8 is in play because it's guarded twice. It looks like just a absolute no-go square from the beginning. But I actually could have taken back, and I think very likely that would have happened. I don't think Danny would have saw that in the game. No knock against him, but he's got seconds left, and he played this way to try to win the pawn back after this exchange. But I didn't play that. I played bishop h3, hitting his rook, and this got momentarily a little murky objectively. So I take, so I'm able to take here. He doesn't take back now, probably fearing maybe some similar stuff. Maybe you actually saw that now that I think about it, if he didn't take at this point, because I could do the same thing. But anyways, he throws in h4, attacking here down on g3. I play this move f5, which seemed good at the time, hitting his queen and opening up the queen towards h4. But I sensed it was a little loosening too. He goes queen h6. I play queen f4, covering against the threat on the rook and thinking I'm going to strengthen my center here. And he had a nice little shot at this point, which is very easy to miss in time pressure. He could have played rook takes e5, knocking out one of the central pawns that I had, this bastion here, as Sagar would say, along the 5th rank. And if I take his rook, he takes my rook. And black's very much in the game, in a pretty messy position. So yeah, he could have taken advantage here with that. Didn't find it though. He took on g3, and I took on h6 because he's opening up the attack on my bishop. So I made a point to exchange. He did not take on h2 at this point, probably because it helps my king get in position, maybe rook g1. But basically the issue for black after this is I'm not too concerned about him capturing another flank pawn here. I just want my central pawns to remain intact, even just 2 of them, which is what happened. So he missed a chance to take my e-pawn. Now I play e6. He can take on d5. We get a trade. He even manages to, I think, even up material here. Yeah, it's 4 pawns versus 4 pawns. But guess what? f6 is coming sometime very soon. I probably should have played it right away here. I don't know why I hesitated. I played rook d1. Not even sure why I did that, because I think that gave him the option of bishop takes a2, which he didn't take. He actually played c6. And now I play f6. He's got to give up the exchange. If he doesn't, he's going to be losing material very soon. Just 2 pawns connected on the 6th rank like that are too much. So yeah, he gives up the exchange. Rook d6 to fork the bishop and the pawn. Tries to defend the c pawn. And here I play rook d7. He actually had another chance to take on a2. I wanted to prevent him from bringing up his king, and I wanted to keep this f pawn. Pretty sure that's still winning, even if he takes, because my king is coming up to assist, and black's so passive here. But that was a better chance. I mean, maybe he could at least get these pawns going. But once more, look at the clocks. It's pretty low. He's been defending. And when he played b5 here, I didn't give him another chance to take that pawn. I played a3, and now it's a pretty routine win for me. Make sure I don't hang my rook. I keep him cut off on the 7th rank. Start bringing out my king. Was actually just able to waltz right in, invade. And then I kept this very simple. Just brought the king back around. Didn't even move the f-pawn. Just sent it right into d6 and then took on c6. He resigned here because I'm going to be getting to his queenside pawns, and the pawn endgame's completely lost. So we take down Danny Rensch in this game. I'd say a pretty good game, and I think I played well according to my game plan. I was never in time pressure in this game. Got a little hairy in the middle game, but I already had a cushion at that point. I was up a pawn. So even when he did win a pawn back, and even the material later, I had all the momentum with those central pawns coming up. But rook takes e5, that would have been a nice shot. Also some cool geometry going on with that possible trade on d5 running into queen a8. So, okay, 2 for 2. And in the next round, I play Levy Rozman. Okay. Yeah, so Levy, the largest chess YouTuber, he was a focal point for many people in this tournament. I'm sure just people, creators who wanted to do well against him and also maybe get some content out of it, which is fair, but also just spectators. Like, he was, of course, so popular. I think the only person I saw get more attention than him was Hikaru when he showed up. But probably they both just were constantly mobbed by people throughout this tournament. So cool, really cool of Levy to participate. Everyone in the Creator Invitational, by the way, super nice. I didn't have a chance to talk to some of them more than others, but Levy and I did get a chance to chat a little bit. It's the first time we met in person. Really, really nice guy. I was on his podcast many years ago, which I always appreciated that he invited me on there. And he performed very well in this tournament too. He scored 7 out of 9, and he's always dangerous. So him and Eric, for the IMs, I was especially careful against. I wanted to make sure I was on my game here. So I'm black in this one. Levy also was on 2 out of 2. I think he had just beat Aman in the prior round. So looking at Levy's stuff a little bit in advance, I saw very quickly he plays all sorts of stuff. He's all over the map. He mostly plays D4, it seems like these days with white, but he was dabbling in E4 and other stuff. I think maybe B3 sometimes too, if I'm recalling correctly. And within D4, he plays all sorts of things, mostly D4 sidelines. I briefly looked at this Bishop G5 stuff, this so-called pseudo Trompowsky. It's not dangerous for black. There's many ways to play against it, but I did look at a few things. And I've played this way that I'm playing here in the past against this opening too. So I like kicking this bishop. White's trying to make it hard for black to develop. Also, they might have in mind taking the knight if it comes to F6. So I just kick the bishop once. He maintains the pin, and then C6. The idea is to shoot the queen out to B6 and gain some time against the pawn on B2. He took a little time here, I remember, and he played B3. I think that's a little bit weaker than queen C1, personally. I would have tried to keep the structure more flexible. I played bishop F5 here, but in hindsight, I wish I would have played E5 because there's a little trick. If he takes, I have queen B4 check, forking the king and the bishop. So I doubt he would have blundered into that, but that would have been a nice freeing move for me. It gets the bishop operating towards the dark squares as well. And I just think that would have been an ideal move there. But I'm trying to play fast. I'm playing simple moves, get the bishop outside the chain before I play E6 is what I was thinking. We get some trades. Not much happened in this opening. We trade the other bishops. So it became 2 knights versus 2 knights. Queen A6 just to pin his pawn here. He was playing a little slow in this stage of the game. I was able to build up a time advantage. Yeah, and here he plays H3. And I think the timestamps are right. I do remember him getting pretty low already at this stage. I decided to take on C4 at this point. My mentality was, okay, we're both on 2 out of 2. I'm not even sure I knew he was on 2 out of 2 at this point, but I knew he was going to be one of my main competitors. If I get a chance to press for a win in any appreciable way, I need to seize that. And that goes for any of these competitors. But up a minute, comfortable position. There's absolutely nothing wrong here for black. I got to maximize my opportunity here. And I wanted to do that by imbalancing the position in some way, making him think. So I thought D takes C4. He could take with the B pawn, but then the pawns look a little bit fragile. And he's got to watch out for various discoveries on the D file, maybe knight B6 at some point. I might even play C5 and try to fix this pawn on the C4 square. So there are things he has to watch out for here. So he ended up taking with the queen, which is probably the correct thing to do under the circumstances. And here I played queen A5. Again, kind of motivated by the desire to seize the opportunity and keep this complicated. Objectively, I don't know if this was the best, though, because my queen did end up going over to the king side. Maybe I should have just brought her back here to, say, C7 and handled this like a Scandi or a Slav or something. But I was trying to make him think, trying to present him with some unique problems. So he plays A4 here. I dig in with A6, much like I did against Sagar. Knight E4, probably a good move. trying to angle for the c5 square. There's not too many imbalances going on here. I mean, he's got the 2 center pawns against 1, but I'm very solid. So we're both angling for squares. Now I play a5, which is kind of funny because I just played a6, but now I go a5. I could have played a5 on the prior move, but I didn't like this knight c5 motif, and I spent a little time here. So I wanted to try to disrupt that and break up his structure a little bit if I can. So I play a5. He pivots the knight back, hits my queen. I flee. He goes queen c3. And now here a pivotal moment occurs. You can see this, I think, in the broadcast to the game. And you can definitely, which I'll link, by the way, in the description, because David Howell and Judith Polgar covered this tournament. There's like a 3-hour-long broadcast. But you can also see it in Sagar's video he made on this game. He posted that to the Chess Base India channel. So here, I played a takes b4, having in mind, after queen takes b4, I saw that he was attacking my pawn on b7. I had in mind the move b6, protecting the pawn, getting it on a safe square. And I like the fact that his a pawn is isolated, and maybe I could go to work against that somehow, like doubling up or queen a5 somewhere. This looked pleasant to me. I thought he'd be saddled with this long-term problem. And Levy called it in his recap. I went and watched his recap right after, and he pointed out that, yeah, I reached for my b pawn here. I was fully intending to play b6, but I noticed before I touched the pawn that my knight on e7 is hit as well. So queen takes b4 is actually a double attack. And you can see this reflected in the time too. So I spent 20 seconds. I'm like, oh no, looks like I'm going to lose a pawn here. If I play c5, trying to defend the pawn and block, he can take, and that's a fresh attack here. Queen takes c5 still loses the pawn on b7. So I'll still lose something. So I was thinking, all right, that was a mistake that I just made. I have to find some way to spice this up. And I play for knight f5, hoping in one sense that he'll play e4, which looks like an obvious fork, but that actually runs into queen d6 with a couple attacks here, and then I'm doing fine, or maybe even more than fine. But yeah, knight f5, and I decided to change the structure like this. I think the computer said knight g6 would have been reasonable, and it finds some counterplay for black after queen takes b7, but I was already thinking, let's try to unbalance this further. If I'm going to go down a pawn, I got to find counterplay elsewhere. And that's the mindset shift that you want when you're find yourself in trouble in a tense game. So yeah, we get this trade of knights. He takes on b7. I go rook d to b8. I'm using a little too much time here too, but I'm trying to plot how I'm going to cause problems for him. So I send the rook down to the second rank. He starts pushing the a pawn. And now I play g5. Look, white's position is too solid here for me to do something normal and expect to maybe save this game somehow. His structure is pristine. You know, there's really no issues. Really, the only thing I have going for me is some vague major piece pressure towards his king with this rook on the second rank. So he's a little bit tender on f2. I also saw in some cases maybe my queen could link up with the rook on g2, but it seemed to me I needed something bold in order to bring that about at all. So g5, I knew this is probably a move the engine's going to hate. Looks super risky, but you got to take risks in a bad position. There's nothing noble in just playing to lose slowly in a position like this. Better to take some calculated risks, and if you lose messy, hey, you were probably going to lose anyways. So g5, I have in mind g4, hitting the knight and also the pawn on h3, the old 2 points of contact. So he played a6. We're both at about 10 seconds here. I get g4 in. There's a trade. He plays queen g3. By the way, yeah, right here after the trade, I was pretty surprised he didn't play knight e5 in this position. I thought that was definitely the way to go here. Attacking my knight on d7 twice, because that seems to pretty much compel knight takes e5 from me. I think g3 is not going to cut it. Yeah, I think he could even just play queen takes d7 here. I'm not quite linking up towards g2 as I would like. If I take on f2, probably king f1 or king h1 are both fine. yeah, there's no check that's going to bother him here. So with the attack on the queen and also f7, I was pretty surprised he didn't play knight e5. I think that would have been a good way to simplify. And then a knight takes, you could take with the queen if you wanted to be super safe. Probably forced me to swap queens in some way. Maybe I would have played, g3, he has queen takes g3. I probably would have been forced to swap queens. Maybe he didn't like something like this. I don't know. But even an endgame like this would have been very unpleasant for me to play with the disconnected pawns. Maybe not losing. I won't bother checking the engine on that, but I thought knight e5 was the way to go here. But this is all unfolding with just seconds for each of us. So g4, we get this trade, queen g3. He's still doing well, by the way, objectively. He pins my g-pawn to my king. I go knight f6 defending. He plays a7. And I play h5. I want to play knight e4, but that loses the pawn on g4 with check. So, yeah, I play h5. I'm covering the b8 square. So even though he's pushed his a pawn as far as it'll go, I'm still preventing queen b8. Now he goes knight e5. And here I play knight e4, just as intended and out of inertia. Queen h4. He's still doing well here, but it's getting tense with no time. I take on f2. He gives a check. I sidestep to the h-file. Yeah, and I think Levy pointed this out in this recap. He actually did not play queen f6 right away here. He threw in a couple checks first and then played queen f6. Probably under the circumstances, taking the draw was the correct thing to do. He might disagree with that, but I don't know. Visually, this is starting to look dangerous to me with this amount of time. It's so hard to know what you would do in hindsight in these low time situations, but I'm hitting the rook and I have another big threat, which ends up happening. So I think it would have made sense for him to take the draw here. Would have made a lot of sense. I think he and also Judith Polgar and Howell pointed out that e4 was a winning move here for white. In my opinion, that's a very tough move in a blitz game. And in fact, that's the only winning move for white at this point. I mean, if someone finds e4 here in a blitz game with a few seconds left, my hat's off to them. But those are the types of things you cannot just look at the computer and say, oh, yeah, you know, this position, everything that happened leading up to this was justified by white because e4 is there. You could do that in classical maybe, but in this type of situation, I don't think as white, given the position you had 5-10 moves ago, you want to be relying on a move like e4 to keep your edge. And the reason e4 wins is twofold. It disrupts my queen from reaching g2. If I take with the queen, I think I run into knight d7. The queen is no longer covering that square. I can't flee to the g-file, and then knight f6 is a fork. And on knight takes e4, I have to remember. So this is the thing. Even me having to remember here tells you it's a hard move to play. I can't actually recall. Is it knight g6 maybe? Let's see. No, it's queen h6 check, king to g8, and then knight takes c6. Okay. Which also, again, in a blitz game, that pressure towards g2 seems real. I mean, you'd have to calculate, or at least briefly look at rook takes g2 here. The idea is white has knight e7 as a big threat. It's winning, I believe that. But you saw, like, I'm trying to kind of reconstruct the analysis here after not having looked at it. This is all just really tough. So this is all to say, I think white probably should have taken the draw here. And I think that leads into question some of the play leading up to it. It's hard, though. It's hard. I mean, I've been in plenty of situations like this where I've blown an objectively winning position when it gets messy and you know that you're winning, but there's still that lingering messiness. The other thing, too, I wonder back here when rook b2 was played, I do wonder if he motored with the a-pawn a little too casually. Maybe there was some way to calm this down a little bit prior to some of these fireworks happening. Yeah, like even something like rook d2 I was wondering about, just to try to neutralize the second rank. I don't know, something I might have considered. But yeah, this is all to say, he eventually gambled, went for the win with this queen f6. And here I landed knight h3 check. kudos if you saw this in advance. I had this in mind. This is one of the major operations I was looking at after taking on f2. But yeah, it was very satisfying to land this check, which allows the queen and the rook, this idea that was percolating, to finally materialize on board. And Levy resigned right away because if he takes the knight, it's checkmate. And if he moves his king anywhere, it's going to be either checkmate in one or checkmate in a couple, like king f1. This will wind up being mate. So a close shave for me in this game. Largely, the action in this one was determined by this miscalculation by me that after queen takes b4, I thought only the b pawn was under attack. Fortunately, I noticed just in time that this was a double attack. But yeah, this game could have gone sideways easily in a different dimension. But I'm proud of myself for not getting too far behind on the clock. I actually think even though we had 10 seconds, the advantage I had earlier in a way helped because he was nervous. He knew he was lagging on the clock. And I had a bit of time to collect myself and look for some avenue for counterplay with this whole rook b2 and g5 concept. So even though it was off the cuff, interesting game. So yeah, you can check out Sagar's video for that one. He's one of the creators who made a couple videos on various games in this tournament. Okay, so I'm on 3 out of 3 after this one. And maybe I can show my player card briefly. It's nice to go undefeated as the tournament progresses. But the thing I had in mind, too, prior to the event, was the way that the pairings came out for me. My toughest competition was all front-loaded. So here we have the full extent of the players that I faced. So you can see Sagar, Danny, Levy, and then Aman and Dina. I played some very tough players in the first 5 games. There was Eric Rosen around 7. I had that game sort of mentally circled as well, especially given Eric's form. But I was thinking, hey, if I'm happy with my score after 5 rounds, I should have a very good chance to win this tournament. So that brings us to round 4. I'm playing Aman Hambleton, who I'll remind you beat Javakir Sindarov the day prior. But yeah, I think he wasn't doing so well so far in this tournament. Again, he lost to Levy. He might have lost to someone else or had a draw. Yeah, he lost to Julien Song the round right before after starting with a leadoff win. And Aman's a big London system player. A couple other players in the field like Eric Rosen who also liked the London. So I did look at something against the London system. And I decided to play d6. I think London players kind of dislike this move because it immediately blunts the diagonal. You do have to know what happens if e4. You have to be willing to go into a Philidor, which I played d4, d6 a few times at this event, and no one did. Or actually, sorry, Aman literally went into this. He didn't go into the main line, though. But yeah, if you're going to play d4, d6, you do have to be aware that white can play e4. So yeah, we transpose into a Philidor. He goes f3. I played e6. This was also not prepped specifically for this game, but an idea I was aware of that I had looked at sometime in advance of the tournament. Looks very weird, but the idea is to morph this into kind of a Benoni later. So he's pursuing a Samish-like development with the pawns on f3, e4, d4, c4. Plays this move bishop d3, probably not so as not to interfere. And I end up playing for c5 after maneuvering a little bit behind enemy lines. And the idea is if Aman plays d5 here, kind of in Benoni style, I can take. And if he were to take with the c pawn, try to get 2 center pawns side by side, I can play b5, which I think must be a pretty good looking version of a Benoni with my mobile queen side. I don't have a fianchetto dark square bishop, but I think the queen side makes up for that. And I think e takes d5 should not be a concern here, especially with knight e5. So yeah, just something roughly that I looked at. He ended up keeping the tension, and we got into a Maroczy bind type situation. So there's a trade on d4. I moved the knight up, kind of hit the pawn on c4. He's letting me take the pawn, but this runs into knight d5 at the end if I were to do that. That's something to avoid here. So I play b6. And we're roughly even on the clock here. But here's another game where I just felt like my opponents were playing a little slower than they might normally play. So rook e1, I'm playing some standard moves for this structure. Black is crouching behind this pawn formation. Queen b8. This is all ideas I'm familiar with. And now bishop d8. This is a plan for black to try to send the bishop to c7 in place of the queen that was just standing on c7. Get that bishop and queen firing towards the h2 pawn. That's a big, big theme. Okay, he goes h6, so he's kind of disrupting this, I think. He's sort of playing with the idea of taking on f6 if I do move the bishop. So I chase his bishop. He backs off, and I get to play bishop c7. So here as well, I think he probably wasn't liking this position so much. Maroczy bind situations, or the hedgehog formation, as it's often called too, they're notoriously tricky for both sides. They can be very nuanced. The engine tends to like white and the space in these, but there's lots and lots of different plans that I won't get into. So he spent a bunch of time here and played f4, probably trying to make something happen with f5, which I think is what he does next. I play rook e8, so I can jump into the e5 square and have the e6 pawn guarded. We get a trade. I definitely don't mind if he takes. If he wants to give me the dark square bishop, that'd be fine. Yeah, bishop e2. And I could tell the time was starting to be a concern for him here. I'm angling for long-range pressure against his center. Yeah, and here, okay. So he's down to seconds. I have 30. And I decided to unleash some counterplay, which often does come in these types of formations where black might play a pawn break at some point and open up the position. So I played b5 and then bishop b6. And I don't know what the computer will say about this. I think maybe it's still about equal. Yeah, apparently only one move keeps this playable for white, knight a4, immediately going after this bishop. But given the time situation and the sudden pins and just some of this long-range pressure Aman is facing, I felt kind of like in that game against Levy, this was my time to strike. So he tries to get stuff off of this long diagonal while I'm piling on the pressure. And now I sack the exchange. This is, again, thematic for many of these positions. I go and take the pawn on e4, forking the queen and the bishop. He's trying to stabilize and keep d4 defended. Now I take back, and I've got this beautiful piece play going on with the two centralized knights, the bishops. We can peek at the engine again. Yeah, it's better for black. I don't want to focus too much on the engine. But again, this was a momentum decision kind of coming from the gut, and it proved to be correct still. Here, I saw rook c3 was going to be very hard for white to fend off because the rook on d1 is tethered to the defense of the knight on d4. So a4, and then I invade. Hit the queen, and things are collapsing. He goes queen e2, and I was able to take on d4 here. And I was even able to take on g3 on the next move. He can't take back because I get the royal fork. So I'm just taking piece after piece. Now, I mentioned I did a post-game interview or two after this tournament. I did mention that I was proud of myself in this one because things got a little hairy coming up. Aman went on a counterattack to his credit, and there was a moment where I almost had a meltdown. So yeah, I get knight f2 in, king g1, I can take on d1 with check. I can stave off all his attacks because I also have pressure on g2 throughout all this too. So he ends up having to give up the rook as well, and he's just down a boatload of material here, right? Queen e3, this is all good by me. I'm looking for a queen trade. Here, I missed, with seconds left for both sides, I missed that he has bishop d3, and I almost panicked thinking that I blew this position. But then I came to my senses, and I'm pretty sure, guys, I made this move king h8 with 1 second on my clock. Aman, also a very nice guy. I'm a big fan of Aman. I watch his content. I think he's a brilliant commentator, player, number of things. He mentioned this after the game. It kind of gave me a little, nod to keeping my cool here. But yeah, I was very proud that I had the wherewithal to find king h8 and execute it before my flag fell. Point being, he doesn't have a good check with his queen. I'm covering the c8 square. Queen e8, I can meet with queen takes e8. The only legal move, but a very good one. So yeah, mini disaster almost happened here after bishop d3. If I play g6, he has queen f7 with a draw. So yeah, I'm really glad I didn't do something completely foolish here and blow this victory. So yeah, I played king h8 and I was able to finish this off with seconds left. He actually resigned here in a moment. So super messy game. I mean, I think I easily could have lost this one with some of the complications, but it felt like the momentum was always in my favor in this game, in the middle game and later in the game in particular. Maybe not so much in the opening. I think we were both sort of grasping our way through this one. This is the first time I've ever played this setup before, this Benoni transposing to a Maroczy. But I am familiar with this Maroczy hedgehog that we eventually got into. And I just played off the momentum with b5, bishop b6. I think I did a good job of seizing my opportunities when I thought they arose in this tournament. So I get to 4 out of 4. And who do we have in the next game? It's Dina Belenkaya. This was the final game before a break, a very short break, but a break nonetheless, maybe 25 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that. So Dina, I played her before. She had a good event. I think she's underrated, and she's a good blitz player, a lot of experience at faster time controls. What was I thinking heading into this? I was thinking playing something flexible against her. I played her a few times in casual chess at the Charlotte Chess Center, and it seems to me she does better in more concrete positions. So I just had it broadly in my head that I wanted to play something flexible here. So I decided to go for a King's Indian attack from the white side. And she plays something that a lot of players seem to do against the King's Indian attack. They play this like French defense style thing with e6, d5. And I've actually played this setup from the white side going back to my youth. So I was pretty happy about this one. This game, I think I didn't play very well objectively. I got a very nice position out of the opening, but my move quality starts to deteriorate. So she played d4. Wasn't quite sure about that move. I decided to play e5 and then h4. She goes f5. I take en passant. Her pawn structure started looking a little wonky. a4 to prepare knight c4. Also f5, I thought that looked like an anti-positional move, giving me the e5 square. I think playing for e5 would have been better if black were to touch a pawn at all. But I get the e5 square. I get bishop h6 in with tempo. I blockade. I was rocking and rolling here. Time isn't a concern. Yeah, here I play queen h5. I think around here, the computer was pointing out some pretty concrete lines that would have been good for me. I'm trying to remember where they are because Judith and David pointed them out after the games. It's very interesting to go back and think about your thought process in the game versus hindsight. I think it was around here. Once I had the bishop pointing towards the knight on d5, there was some pretty concrete way to play and win material or put black in a very tough spot. I'm going to throw the engine on just for the purposes of time. Yeah, knight g4. They did something with bishop takes d5. I think there's a more clear example of it coming up. Despite knight g4 and the move I played queen h5 being +5 here. Okay. Yeah. So I took on c6 here, and that's a pretty big miss. Yeah, this was it. So my queen was hitting the rook, which she played to d8. So I don't think it occurred to me that my rook might actually end up landing on e8 in some sequence. And that had a chance of occurring if I had played bishop takes d5 right here. So if e takes d5, and this would have been tough to see, but this is where knight g4 is especially powerful. Hitting the bishop, but especially making way for rook e8. It's a mate in two threat, actually. If black takes the rook, or takes the knight rather, I come in and this is checkmate. So there were some clearance ideas here with the e-file, starting by bishop takes d5 to try to entice that pawn off of d5. And notice that black cannot take with the rook, because that allows mate in 1. So the lines quickly narrow once you realize that. On bishop takes d5, black would have had to take on e5 from the looks of it. But funnily enough, black has the same issues after the recapture. I think bishop takes e5 is going to run into rook takes e5. Yeah. And the point here is that I have queen g5 at the end. And that is devastating. Yeah. Probably some sequence like this is made in a few as well. Black's king getting chased around. So some tactics here I think I would have sniffed out in a classical game, but in a blitz game, I wasn't remotely thinking in that direction of getting the rook to e8. So I took on c6, and I still thought my position was good. Bishop g5, but I think I overextended a little bit. There was another moment where I could have won something pretty easily coming up. Yeah, around here. So I believe I was fixated on maintaining my knight on this e5 square, so we trade. And it didn't occur to me at all that I could take this very bad-looking bishop on d7 and then just scoop the pawn on e6 with check and still enjoy an excellent position, winning position thereafter with rook takes c6 and dominance of the e-file, black's various pawn weaknesses. This should be a pretty trivial win given the material and the piece activity. So yeah, I could have taken on d7 and cashed it on e6, but I played the queen back to h5. I think I was vaguely trying to do something on the king side still. I ended up trading queens, getting this pawn to g5. And to Dina's credit, I thought she played very cleverly from here. She gets her knight to b4, gets me tied down to this pawn, defends c6, and then she plays this move rook a7. I completely missed the point of this move. I thought the rook was going to stay somewhere on the queen side or maybe go towards the e-file to help shore up the e-pawn. But actually, she had in mind rook g7, going after the g-pawn. Completely, something that completely escaped my attention. The position's still good for white because I have excellent square control and black's remaining pawns are pretty weak. But she gets back in this game. I sort of mess around here a little bit. Yeah, apparently knight d6 would have been better around here. I think I considered that move for sure, but yeah, probably some concrete sequence like this may prevent black from queenly winning a pawn. But around here, I started burning some time and trying to look in a different direction. But the fact that I have some time remaining is very nice. So 101 to 34. I play this move rook d1 after spending 20 seconds or so. The point is to go c3 with my rook defending the d-pawn. The fact that I had some time to come up with a pivot like that did help coming up. Okay, now here, we turn off the engine, or maybe I can keep it on. I take on d4, and she had knight f4 here. Another thing that escaped my attention in this position. Using the pin, that would have picked up an exchange, and all of a sudden, black is probably winning, although I think objectively I have chances there. So after the capture, now I noticed it, and I moved my king out of the way. But here, she, I think, sensed her chance. She played f4. I tried to keep things closed. I take on h5. We can debate some of these moves. And here I go king g2. Big mistake, apparently. She pounced with f3, drawing my king out in the open before I can blockade. And now rook f8. And with the two rooks and the knight in proximity to my open king, I'm in big trouble. So, okay, at this point, both her and I sense that white should be in very big trouble here. My mentality is, what moves can I play that complicate her potential win the most? And can I play them quickly? And if I have to give up material to stabilize and frustrate her attack, it's probably going to be worth it. So that's what I had in mind for the next 30 seconds or so in this flurry that comes. So I play my king up to attack her rook. I remember thinking she should have played knight f6 here, but apparently that was not even best. Apparently backing off the rook on the h-file and then regrouping and trying to corral me over to the h-file myself was the way to go. And then I probably lose because the knight is galloping in as well in some way. Yeah, probably just going to be busted. Maybe I can show that briefly. Yeah, something like this. Yeah, if I try to save the rook, yeah, rook f5, black's coordinating beautifully with my king completely cut off. So she definitely had something like that around here. She backs the rook off to h6, but that allows me to play knight e5 and cover the g6 square. Okay, maybe here's where I thought she should have played knight f6. Somewhere in my brief thought process at the stage, I thought black should get the knight involved. But she went rook f4, and I played king g3, and all of a sudden I was thinking, hey, there's no checks anymore. She backs off, and I get to improve a piece. And now my knight and rook are both in the defense. And she plays the knight back to f6 at this point. And here's where I applied that thinking from a moment ago. I like knights in blitz games. We know the value of a knight. As I say in my videos, if you have a knight, you have a chance. So I thought, you know what? I'm not even going to attempt to save my rook here, which is kind of awkwardly defending my knight on e5. Let's just let her take the rook, but I'm going to pivot my knight back, hit her rook, and if she wants to take my rook at some point, that's fine. There's even a little trap here, I guess, right away. If takes, I'm on both rooks. She could play rook g5, I suppose, but maybe then f4. But anyways, I was intent on giving up that rook, basically, is what I want to say with knight g4. She pinned me, and I doubled down and played f3 to really highlight the fact that I didn't want her to get through here at all. And she takes e4, but now I take with the d-pawn, hit the rook, and open up the attack on d4, and the momentum completely shifts. Now I know I'm not getting mated with the proximity of my knight and the stabilizing pawn around my king. I start to defend my pawns. And I think, practically speaking, I'm the only one playing for a win at this point because black's remaining pawns are quite weak. I have a more compact, well-coordinated position. And I go to work on these pawns, start hinting that I might get my king involved too. And when my king penetrated to g5, I thought I was winning at this point, or I was going to win. Even if maybe black can still hold. King e7 apparently still holds here, but I think most everyone's going to take white, especially in this situation. So maybe that's a little lesson if you're trying to defend in a tough spot, especially low time control situation for your opponent, you and your opponent. Look for compact coordinating moves, even if you have to give up material. Get pieces around your king, frustrate your opponent in terms of how they're going to most cleanly get at your king and execute that attack, even if you have to give up a little something to do it. I think getting that knight over and sacking the exchange was pivotal in this one. So yeah, I ended up taking on e5, defending f3, hitting c6. And here, because I had time, I was actually able to pause and come up with this final sequence. She was pretty low, and I played knight takes c6. I want to say she was even lower than what the broadcast has here, but I could be wrong about that. And here I played e5 because I saw on king d5, rook c5 was mate. And this is how the game ended. But yeah, even if she played king d7 or something, have this move knight d4, forking the two rooks and defending the pawn on f3, and white should win. So roller coaster game. I had a much better position out of the opening, just some control of some real key squares, blockading. But then I wasn't quite sharp enough. I had some ways to capitalize, but there's a lot of kind of junk in the way, pieces. I probably needed to calculate something. A little bit of inflexible thinking around here. I should be looking at knight takes d7, even though it's trading a beautiful knight for a bad bishop. It wins a clean pawn. And to Dina's credit, she fought very well in this one, very resourceful. And that added up to a good result for her in this tournament. I think she surprised some people in this tournament. So, yeah, I mean, I dodged some bullets in this one, but I hesitate to call this luck, guys. Judith was sort of talking about this on the broadcast, that when you get on a roll in a tournament, it feels like all the luck is going your way. But this is getting meta. I think in blitz especially, you have to look at the clock always and the circumstances leading up to where swings in the evaluation occur. Like, it's so hard to just stop on a dime here and say, well, yeah, of course black should have played knight f4. Isn't that obvious? That's a fork. Yeah, if you give this to black as a puzzle and you don't have to make your decision in a second or two, and there's not a seemingly routine recapture available when you're under 30 seconds, I might agree with you. But white had all the momentum leading up to this. She was also behind on the clock. It's not surprising to me that black would miss knight f4 here. And I think that's really an important part of the picture when you're thinking about like luck and just how results occur, especially in fast time control situations. There's like momentum is number one. I've had some videos recently where I talked about this in the title. Momentum is number one in these fast time control situations. That determines the bulk of the action. So even just on a meta level like this. So some interesting moments like that. Okay, so that takes us to round 5. Thank you guys for sticking with this video. It's longer than I wanted to make this. But after round 5, there was a break. I was able to go up to my hotel room for like 20 minutes, kind of catch my breath, have something to drink. I think I got some iced tea out of the refrigerator and like brought it down to the game with me or something. And I knew, being 5-0 at this point, I think Levy was still in the mix, maybe another player or two. I knew this was my tournament to win. And I pretty much sensed that from the time that I beat Levy and then Aman. Like rounds 3 and 4, that's when I thought, okay, I got to win this tournament. And my mentality the rest of the way was just don't question a hot streak. Another thing I've tried to stress to you guys in my videos. If you guys ever go on a very positive string of success in chess, but also in life, don't spend your time thinking about that while it's occurring. Trust me, you will have plenty of time to think about that later when the glow of the action, and especially this momentum I'm referring to, has dissipated. Try not to think about it when it's actually occurring. Don't question the hot streak. Just ride the hot streak. Don't try to do anything different. Don't also think, and this is very poisonous, don't think, oh, well, you know, I'm overperforming here. I'm probably due for a correction. You know, there's got to be some reversion to the mean that's going to happen in the next few rounds. Don't even entertain that. That's irrelevant. Again, you can think about that later. Let the statisticians calculate that later. You're on a roll. You got to keep that momentum. These things don't happen too often, and you got to fully enjoy that experience when it occurs. And let the universe, is getting a little meta. I swear I'm not too woo-woo, but let the universe show you how far you can take it. That's what you owe to yourself. So that's what I was thinking the rest of the way. There's only 4 games left. I had a lead in the tournament. I knew I was facing some easier opponents, but I'm going to enjoy this, and I'm going to be fully open to the possibility that I'm going to win my next 4 games and win this creator tournament 9 out of 9. So let's get into round 6. I'm playing Alexandra Botez. Huge credit to the Botez sisters for playing this tournament. I think I had met Alexandra and Andrea once before in Charlotte at the US Masters. Also very nice. I feel like a broken record here, but some truly genuinely nice people. And I know a couple of them, like I mentioned, Levy. I was kind of going out of my way to assure you guys he's a nice guy. Not because I feel a need to defend him or anything, but I do see a lot of comments on certain creators online, and trust me, like a lot of them are very, very nice people in person when you meet them. Even if they're playing up a persona, I can assure you it's a persona. That's their content decision. So Botez sisters, though, I've always known them to be nice. They seem that way on their content too. And it's cool that they played because they were the 2 lowest rated players in this creator invitational by far, especially Andrea. But they both scored in this tournament. Alexandra actually beat, I think it was Eric Rosen. Yeah, Alexandra beat Eric Rosen, and Alexandra and Andrea drew with each other. Okay, so this video is already getting long. I'm going to try to go a little faster in this second half, but I'm enjoying this. This is fun, talking through my thought process. So another D4, D6 game. I don't remember knowing what Alexandra would play. Just off the top of my head, I don't recall having a particular line in mind. I just knew D4, D6 worked out well against Aman, and maybe I'll play it again. I didn't play it against Levy, by the way, if you were wondering, because I did see that he played all those D4 sidelines, and I didn't mind facing those. So I was happy to play D4, D5 in that one. But against Alexander, I played D6. And the point here is on C4, you can play E5. If white wants to prevent that, knight F3 is the best way to do it. But on C4, the normal follow-up to D4 for a lot of people, black can play E5. And this queenless middle game that's possible after the exchange, this is known to be perfectly fine for black, this swap. You can hide your king on C7. I have a lot of games on my channel like this. So she played D5. I went bishop E7, and I actually went for a quick exchange of the dark square bishops here, which should favor black because black has pawns on dark squares. So trading my bad bishop for her bishop that's probably good because she has pawns on light squares, so her light square bishop is maybe the bad one. That's a good bargain here. Here I played A5. Not sure this was necessary, but I was actually thinking after we trade, I want to angle for the C5 square. That was my plan. And I get to do that. So nice knight here anchored, traded the dark square bishops. Here I played knight F6. I think in hindsight, I should have played the knight to E7 or maybe even H6. I think that would have made more sense because if I want to go for F5 later, there was no reason to put my knight on F6 and hinder that plan. So I play knight F6, H3. She's just making some normal moves. And now I'm thinking, okay, let's try to get something going on the king side, maybe knight H5. She plays queen G5, which is probably a decent move, forcing a queen trade, or very nearly forcing. I guess I could play knight F6 here. But I continue with knight F4. And she had an advantage here, I believe, because I underestimated after the queen trade that white might suddenly try to create something on the queen side. So she plays knight B5, hitting the pawn on C7, sort of taking advantage of the fact that my pawn is loose. So I have to play this awkward rook D7 move and stabilizing the queen side. And she's working up to B4 here. Bishop A6, B4. I fianchetto my knight. I was still feeling okay here. Flee with the rook. And I think around here, yeah. So she was using a little more time. Probably trying to feel her way through the position. Probably most people are going to look at this and say white is better. I think that's the case. But it's not so clear, even now when I look at it, how white should progress here. Especially on the queen side, right? Because we're holding up C5. You don't want to take on A5. That allows black to take back with the knight. White structure is worse. You can't back the knight off and try to install the bishop on C6 because that loses the C pawn. So I think what Alexandra was thinking was, well, the bishop is in opposition to the rook, and also the C pawn is loose. So rook F to C1 looks useful to defend the pawn, but she did lose an exchange here with knight E2. So I don't know, maybe something like king H2 preparing G3 might be better. Let's see what the computer thinks. Yeah, that's up there. Rook Fe1 as well. It's not so obvious what I should do either, because I don't want to take and open up the queen side if I don't have to. So yeah, maybe I would have tried to do something with knight D3, but I think more likely I probably would have attempted to play on the king side, G6, F5. But I guess in some universe, white might be able to do this at some point, get the bishop to C6. I don't know, though. That seems like a tough call to make in a blitz game. Another one of those easier. In hindsight, with the engine running, definitely not easy in a blitz game. So, yeah, she blundered here with rook C1, allowing knight E2 check. And my play unfolded pretty naturally here. And I was still able to keep the momentum on the clock up, too. I traded bishop for knight, took on B4. My rook got to invade, started attacking some of these pawns. G6, always a useful type of move to play. Creates luft for my king. I improved the king slightly. I felt like there was no rush. And then I started going after this pawn. My knight always has a way out. The knight's kind of awkward, but yeah, here she has to defend the knight. She plays for C5. I don't know, maybe rook d1 is a little more tenacious, but I understand c5. It allows the bishop to defend. But I was able to trade and then play f6. I'm just keeping the base of the structure always very secure. Also keeping this knight out. I don't want that knight to land anywhere unexpected. She plays c6. Really, the only plan here for white is to eventually try to get at c7. But with my rook, especially on the b file, and very few weaknesses, that's almost impossible for white to pull off. So yeah, here she gets to stabilize, try to get the rook in, but it's just practically too difficult. I wouldn't know what to do myself in this position either. And then my knight sprang to life. So knight g5 hitting these couple of pawns. Yeah, that was a fork. I was able to win this pawn. And then I saw a little tactic. Rook takes d3. Rook's defending the knight too. And that allows me to pick up 2 pieces for the rook. Now I'm up a piece and a pawn. And the rest was just cleaning up. So this felt like one of my more straightforward victories. Again, I'm happy I managed my clock well, even though I did benefit from a blunder in this game. But I feel like this is one of these games I had in mind prior to this tournament, where I stuck to my game plan. Yeah, white's better. We can throw on the engine here. Maybe upwards of +1 even at various times. But I forced Alexandra to play maybe a position she was a little unfamiliar with. And it's complicated, right? There's tension in the position. I'm not making it obvious where the pawns should be exchanged or what side of the board even we should be focused on. There's still some considerations on the king side for white. And those are all very useful things, especially when you're playing down and rating a bit. This is another thing I've talked about in recent videos. If you can play up tension against lower rated players, I'm a big fan of that. Kind of trusting in your ability to navigate open-ended positions more than they will have that ability. Can sometimes backfire, but as long as you're not being reckless with that theme, I think it's a very good one to keep in mind. So yeah, fairly smooth victory, but mostly because Alexandra blundered the exchange. Okay, and on to the next round. I played Eric Rosen. Definitely a game that I had on my radar, like I was saying, as one where I had to be on point. Eric and I have played a couple times, I believe, in like chess.com Blitz, probably Title Tuesday, Lee Chess Arena. This is the one game where I think my opponent just managed his clock much better than I managed my clock, because I was getting outplayed on the clock for the first 2/3 of this game, let's say. And then it sort of switched. But yeah, Eric, I have a lot of respect for him. He's got great preparation. He knows his lines super well. He's really good at finding unpleasant lines. We know he likes to play tricky chess, gambits. I wasn't trying to completely avoid complicated stuff, but I was trying to get a more technical position. I would say my approach to Eric in this game was kind of more like the game against Danny too, where I was erring on the side of a 2-result game, but not a dead game. I wasn't looking to exchange everything. Something safe where if action were to occur, he was the one who's going to be having to take more risks. And if I could grind him somehow, that would be a best case scenario, and trying to play fast throughout. So I played another King's Indian attack style. He goes for this reversed sort of Tory attack, just without knight f6. And in this game, I played for c4 instead of e4. Maybe because the bishop's on g4. Maybe I felt that way during the game. But I've seen this German grandmaster, Georg Meyer, play this way for a number of years. So c4 and then send the queen out to b3, hit this pawn. Then on queen b6, you play bishop e3. Eric could have taken on b3 here, but maybe he didn't want to open the a file. He plays bishop c5. And I think here, yeah, I start to use a little too much time. That was a 20-second move. We get some trades. He actually does what I did against Sagar with this swap. Knight d2. So these are just developing moves. I thought, maybe I'll have a little something. I play d4, gain some space. Then e3, I got to defend the pawn. He's gaining some space himself. Guess the time management wasn't as bad as I thought, but I think somewhere around here I start using quite a bit of time. Yeah, rook fc1. I was unsure if I should be playing for a break with the b pawn here or with my e pawn. I could continue maneuvering, which I guess I ultimately decided to do, but I was torn between the b pawn and the e pawn pushes, figuring out how I could best prepare them. And I eventually played this move, maybe anticipating b6 by Eric, but he actually plays for e5. I back my bishop off so e4 doesn't come with tempo. And we sort of pivot over to the e file. Yeah, and then he plays knight e4, and I go and take the e file again. I felt like somewhere around here he lost the thread a bit. He plays queen b4, maybe knight e4. I'm not sure I'm a fan of that move. I think I probably would have looked to double the rooks myself. Rook e7, rook e8, just off the top of my head. Maybe rook e4 even, if he wants to try to freeze my knight. Make me tied down to the d pawn. You'd have to look at some knight jumps there to verify them. But yeah, knight e4, I think didn't do him any favors. And I think that's the case coming up too. Queen b4, he induces a3. Yeah, I really thought he might go for b6 somewhere, but it never happened. So while he had this knight jammed on e4, I end up doubling my rooks. And around here, Eric starts to take some time as well. I play knight e5. He backs off. Bishop h3. So now I'm full on, I felt, coordinating and making progress in the center. Queen b5. I play the bishop back. We repeat. And he actually does not repeat here. I don't think I would have gone for a draw, actually, had he played queen b5. But it crossed my mind that it could have repeated. But he makes the decision for me and avoids it. He's probably thinking he's got to win some games too, because I think Levy was ahead of him at this point. So rook a d8. He's centralizing too. And I get all tripled up on the e file here. Queen c7. Notice the time. And here I play knight g4. What was I thinking around here? Yeah, again, I believe I was thinking he had to start being cautious, because various knight discoveries, especially this knight g4 move, whereupon I'm threatening to take with check, are on the table at this point. Let me throw the engine on. Still a little bit better for white. Nothing crazy, though. Yeah, I want him to play the knight back to e4. I think knight e6 was a move I was thinking about, too. Hitting the d4 pawn. Knight takes f7 looks awfully tempting here, but probably fails to. Knight takes d4, or at least black is not worse. Yeah, so I think when knight g4 landed, I was feeling pretty happy at this point, because I see his dilemma here. Even though the computer thinks I shouldn't rush knight g4, it wants me to maybe eye up this a pawn. If he takes on e3, I can insert knight takes f6 with check and then take the rook, and he'll have bad pawns. If he takes the knight, he loses e8. Oh, maybe it was this move, knight 8 to h7, retaining the coherence of the knight defending the knight and the other knight defending the rook. That might have been what I was thinking about that he should do. But he played the knight into e4. I went f3. And yes, so here, I remember analyzing this after the game. He's apparently still okay, but the moves in which he can select to keep him within the realm of close to equality here are not easy. One is a knight sack, which, knowing Eric, I mean, he probably would not have hesitated to sack a knight. But the sequence in which this goes down is specific, right? Yeah, he has to play this, because if he plays queen takes g3, I have queen g2, and I cover everything. So he has to throw in rook takes e3 first. It's not so obvious that knight takes e3, queen takes g3, bishop g2 should be okay for black. He has two pawns for the piece. I guess d4 being weak, maybe knight e6 to f4, or the rook coming to the e file gives black compensation. It's not so obvious. There's also the queen takes e3 option, and then bishop g2, maybe kind of similar. Perhaps knight takes g3 crossed his mind, but he just didn't see a way to get a third pawn or a way to really hurt my king. So I understand why he didn't go for that. And h5 too. He went for f5. He does have to play a counterattack move at this point because, again, I'm loaded up on the e-file towards his rook. Knight f6 is just going to lose to knight takes f6. So maybe I take back a bit what I said. It's not outlandish that he's going to look at knight takes g3 or maybe h5, but the play is getting a little weird here and concrete. And this is maybe what I'm talking about. I was talking about at the start of this game where it almost does feel too results-ish in a way. I'm forcing him to do something potentially murky at this point that may not be to his advantage with a counterattack. Whereas from my perspective, I'm just trying to get at his rook on e8 and challenging him to avoid losing material now. And he selected f5, which is the third move according to the engine, but not nearly as good as the other ones. h5, I guess, works. If takes, maybe this is a better version of what happens because he gets to keep his pawns a little more coherent. He's down a pawn here too. But knight h7, yeah, he comes to f6. Maybe he has some decent compensation. It's not obvious, though. He plays f5, and something similar happens where I take and he takes my knight. But look at that huge difference in this evaluation versus that other line. Yeah, because now his king is more open. It's probably a little harder to maneuver his knight when that's the case. He'd rather have that pawn be on f7 instead of h6. So here, yeah, I win a pawn in this transaction. Take, he takes, and I scoop. And I've got e4 well protected. I get to advance this pawn to e5. And here I feel like I should have been able to win this one more easily than I did. We trade queens. I start opening the b file. So I play b3. We get a trade here. He almost flags somewhere around here. You can see he's at 3 seconds. He did a good job of avoiding that and going for counterplay. There's a moment coming up where I thought I had a concrete win, and I got a bit excited. So I played e6 here, threatening e7, obviously. He goes rook e3. I play e7. He goes knight g6. He has to stay out of range of my bishop and rook and whatnot, and also promotion. And for whatever reason in my head, prior to this, I thought I had bishop e6 here. And again, if you look on the broadcast, I think they show this. I reach for my bishop, and I actually touch my bishop this time. Unlike the Levy game where I restrained myself from touching the pawn, so I didn't have to move the pawn. So I touch the bishop, and I move it somewhere like in the e6 vicinity, and then I think, oh, actually that loses the bishop. And so I pause. We both kind of look at the clock, and I put the bishop back on h3, and I sort of gather myself. And I'll show you what happens coming up. But yeah, I think I should have kept that pawn on e5, maybe in hindsight. Maybe something like king f2 even would have been more practical to guard against rook e3. I feel like I could even give up h2. Yeah, something like this, which looks plausible for black to do in time pressure. I could easily see me winning the game. It's still a little bit tricky here, though. e7 runs into king f7, so I'd have to find rook b8 first. But something a little more restrained. Apparently e6 is still completely fine, but I should have thrown in king f2, hitting the rook. What happens on rook e4? Bishop f5. That was the way to do it. Okay. And he's running out of squares on the e-file. Actually, that's pretty straightforward, isn't it? And then I can push or play rook b8. Yeah, and he's going to have to give a knight if he can even stop promotion. Yeah, okay, so I don't know. Maybe my instincts were correct here that I was concretely winning, but I got over my skis. I got ahead of myself by trying to rush it with touching the bishop here, thinking I had some interference. I don't know why I thought that. Maybe it's one of these things I hear people report where you get like the way the pawns are going and the color of the pawns mixed up in your head. Maybe I thought black's pawn was defending my bishop. I have no clue. I have no clue why I touched the bishop. But I play bishop d7, and he gets to take. And this is still good for me, but it did not feel that way in the game. I thought black was pretty much back in this one. I guess I'm still winning with rook b3. How does that work? I can give up the pawn and then now play bishop e6. Whoa. Probably something on the light squares hurts him here. If the knight moves bishop f5, yeah, I'm probably not going to find that. Starting with rook b3. So anyways, what happens is he knocks out that e-pawn. We do a little jostling. He takes the D pawn. I take the C pawn. It's still bishop and rook against knight and rook. And I have some chances, though, because of the outside C pawn, I thought, in practice. But I also thought he has chances because he has a knight. Okay, some moves get played. He takes on h2. I decide to de-risk the situation a little bit and play bishop takes f5 and then rook takes g7. Still, I thought this was a 2-result game. Equal pawns, but my c pawn clearly looks more dangerous. He defends this correctly, though. He tries to keep his king close. I try to cut off his king. He's playing on seconds here. King d4. He plays rook d1, and I actually think I maybe should not have gone for king d4. I think it's still equal here. Yeah, but I realized here I have to trade rooks and enter a pawn endgame because, well, maybe I don't. I rejected king c3 because of the fork, but I see I have this move, which still works out to be a draw, but that flashed through my head in the game, so I just dismissed king c3. So we get to this situation with rook d3, and then the rook's coming off the board. This is a drawn king and pawn ending, but a key moment occurs right here. So king c3, d4 check, king c4. I felt this way during the game, but kind of a typical theme in king and pawn endings is that the kings should push and lead the passed pawns. So he played h5 here, but I believe after h5, it's losing. I play c6. He has to chase, and I get to take his pawn. He takes mine, but then he's just out of position. He's just out of position. I'm going to go scoop up his remaining pawn. And even though he can offload this pawn at some point, I can keep his king out of the corner, right? So he plays h4 here. I take, obviously, and he's not quite in time to slip into the corner. I can deny king f8, which would allow him to draw if he were to get there, with king g7 just in time. And had he not done that, like let's say here, instead of h4, he played king e8 right away. This might have been a little bit tricky in time pressure, actually. Maybe he should have tried king e8 in hindsight, but king g5 wins because on h4, I can take with the king and not the pawn. And I can maintain a knight pawn, which is winning. I'm going to get to a key square, which are one of these. So yeah, king g5 or king h5. This will be a win. King's too far in front of the pawn. So yeah, he had a way to draw, actually. He played this h5 move, but king e4 was the move here. I had calculated this briefly in the game, and I mentioned it to him right afterwards. He's a great player, so he probably didn't have to look at this long in hindsight to realize it. But we would both queen at the same time, and this is a draw. I can't even really cleanly win this remaining pawn because he wins mine right after I do. So yeah, objectively, this king and pawn ending should have ended in a draw. And I think Eric defended that little sequence after he won the e-pawn pretty well, according to the engine. Again, apparently I can win with this rook b3 move right here, but I'm not going to find those details in a blitz game. My big mistake was thinking I had a concrete win here. I got too excited, frankly. I was already thinking of getting to 7 out of 7 here and winning this game. So, back and forth game here. Eric handled his time better than I did in the beginning. I do have to curtail my time management with moves like rook fc1, I think. But I think I kept my cool. I think I made a good transition in the middle game here, taking over the e-file and posing some problems. And then f3. But I do also think Eric overpressed in this game. Maybe he should have offered a repetition and just seen what I've done. That might have been not a bad strategy. But yeah, I kind of ended up getting a situation, a 2-result situation, if you will, where black's still okay here, it looks like, but he's going to have to sack piece for 2 pawns or maybe go down a pawn. And it's not simple to work through those details with less than 10 seconds. Okay, so 7 out of 7, we get to round 8. And in this one, I'm playing the player I probably knew the least about in the field. Maybe Sagar was similar. Julien Song of France. Another cool guy. He is the largest French chess YouTuber, I believe. And he was having a tough time this tournament. I think he lost a bunch of games. No, he's winning games in the beginning. Maybe he lost towards the end. Maybe it was his blitz and rapid wasn't going so well. I feel like I heard him made a comment as such. If he played really well in those events, I apologize, Julien. But yeah, this was another game that went d4, d6. And Julien played kind of a passive setup here. He played e3, knight f3, bishop e2. I just went for an old Indian style setup. Very flexible. And I've learned in these situations, if white lets you play e4, after a certain point, you should usually do it. And with playing c6, I was already plotting e4. He's expanding on the queen side because I can quickly follow up with d5 and support this structure. The engines tend to think highly of this for the side grabbing the space, so black in this case. And I was pretty happy with this in the game. He's trying to vaguely pressure my queen side, but there's some risks involved. Let's say he played c5 here. He could try to close up the center and just play on the queen side, but I may look to, I don't even know if this works concretely, but I may look to start getting King's Indian attacks, King's Indian defense style counterplay against his king and start pushing over there. So I feel he might have been a little concerned about that because he traded in the center and then pushed on the queen side, but I found a nice way to complete development, I think, and stay organized here. I'm keeping my pawns back a little bit, just seeing which way he pushes. Mostly I'm trying to play natural moves, though, because this is another game where I'm playing fast, and I look up and I'm up 45 seconds. Rook f c1, knight f5, offering a trade of bishops. We trade the pawns here. This just seems simplest to me. I think David Howell said he might have preferred a6 here, but in this structure, I wasn't looking to give white a reason to ever sack on a6. I just wanted to clarify the queen side, maybe give white a target. And I don't know if this was a sacrifice or a blunder, but I took on a3 and Julien let me take on b6. I think that almost certainly was a blunder because I was surprised he didn't take with the rook. Had he done that, I don't know off the top of my head what I would have played. Maybe something like h5. This move was on my radar to make luft for my king and maybe get something going towards his king, maybe knight g4 somewhere in conjunction with queen d6. I could see that being a thing. But he took on a3, and I was allowed to scoop up a pawn here. And even though he's got some compensation, a pawn's a pawn. And as far as I'm concerned, this is firmly within two results territory for me. I'm playing for a win or a draw at this point. And I'm up on the clock. And look, I mean, he's already pretty much playing on the increment at this point. I'm nursing my extra pawn. I'm looking to keep pressing, improve my position, but also keep some tension so he doesn't have super simple decisions. And I think I did a pretty decent job of continuing to improve. So I got this pawn on b5. White can't attack it easily, keeping the tension here. Continue to improve the position. And now here he played g3. As far as I could tell, that blundered another pawn because I can meet g4 with f5. My bishop doesn't get trapped. He trades knights and jumps in. I pick up another pawn here. So at this point, what? I'm up 3 pawns. And they're doubled on the king side. But I knew this was winning. That's pretty apparent. And here it was just a matter of slowly improving my position. I was also trying to prevent counterplay. So rook a8, stopping his rook from coming to the a file. Maybe he could have tried that somewhere, but then the b pawn runs, and as long as I dodge his rook knight coordination, it should be fine. Yeah, rook f8, and then I got eventually my rook into f3 and started pushing. g3 was nice because it broke up this final pawn defense that he had, this final pawn structure, fortification. Yeah, more gouging at his structure here. He's just bouncing around with the knight. Now, mostly I have to think about avoiding stalemates. Yeah, his king is pseudo-stalemated here, and this was funny. I realized right after the game that there was no reason for me to do this, but here, I didn't take his knight. I was getting a little low too. I thought, let's just have him at least have 2 pieces on board so he doesn't stalemate me, but I could have taken the rook, and d5 is his only legal move, but I set up this net, I was just looking for knight f3 check with rook f2 mating net when the king goes to f1 eventually was my thinking. So yeah, he was running with the rook, and I did eventually take it when it was clear that d5 was the only move, and he resigned one move before checkmate. So I went through this one pretty fast. This kind of felt like the game against Alexandra as well, where I feel like it was decided by a blunder, admittedly, where he gave me the pawn and I was able to slowly improve from there. But I think that blunder was kind of born from the time pressure that I was able to, not even I was able, he put himself under. I think he was feeling the pressure a little bit, feeling the strain. And it's deep in the tournament. He's been playing chess for 3 days. It's tiring for everyone. And I didn't have to exert much effort to get to, let's say, this position. And I didn't try to do too much with the position. So a variety of those factors all coming together. Okay, so 8 out of 8. It's the final round. Going into the final round, I had the tournament all cinched up, actually. Levy was my closest competitor, but he was, I think, a full 2 points behind. He finished with 7 out of 9. So I think he was 2 points behind. So I had this in the bag no matter the final result. And I played Andrea Botez. She's the lowest rated player in the field. Kudos to her for stepping up. It is not easy to enter a field like this, knowing you're on paper expected to lose every game. But I saw some of her games. We were able to kind of catch the end of games. We were playing up on a stage, so occasionally some game would be going on, and I was able to catch the end of a few games. And against Alexandra, her sister, they had a really hard-fought game that she ended up drawing, and she was fighting. And in this game, there was a scare. So never question the hot streak. I'm thinking of the 9 out of 9, but I'm not trying to think about it too hard. I'm just letting my hand play the moves. Same strategy, just play chess that makes sense to me, play it fast. Don't dwell on decisions that I don't have to dwell on, which are most decisions in a blitz game. Play the first or second move that comes to mind. Only calculate if you absolutely need to calculate. So I play another King's Indian attack style thing. She mirrors me, and then we switch to a pure King's Indian defense line, d4, d6. I have some experience in these positions. I play c4 a lot of times here, but this time I trotted out rook e1, looking for e4. She goes knight c6. I decide to play d5 and then e4, gain some space. She plays e5. I take. I think I faced this online a time or two. And I bust up the structure here. Yeah. So looking to give black some structural issues, like e6 is already a little bit tender. If she takes, it's an isolated pawn. Knight d5. We trade. Now the e-pawn's isolated. My position felt excellent here. Knight bd2. I'm angling for some squares. Bishop g5. Develop with tempo. And here, I got excited because I spotted knight c7. Black just put herself in a pin here. That move kind of seemed poor. It seemed concretely bad because I saw I could play c4. And if the knight were to move, I can trade queens and then pick up the knight on e7. So I play c4. And to Andrea's credit, she finds, I think, the only move, h6. She has to counterattack my bishop. I took on d5. I could also play bishop h4, but then she'll go g5. Probably white's better here too, but didn't seem necessary. So I take on d5. She takes on g5. I saw that with this sequence, I can look to take on g5 at the end and go up a pawn, and black has a really open king. But she takes on b2. I take d8. Rook b1, hit the bishop. Now I take on g5, which defends the pawn on e6. So it's a bit of a weird structure, but I have 5 pawns to her 4 pawns. And with the pawn on e6, black's king being open, this feels very good. Also, maybe most importantly, it's hard for black to complete development. So if I go to contest the d file, with black being unable to connect the rooks, that looks challenging. But buckle up, because after c6, rook d1, she plays rook d5. A good move, I think. And here, I get overeager. This is maybe the same thing that happened in the Eric Rosen game later in that game. So I was staring at my bishop on g2, and I thought rook d5 was kind of a creative move, trying to block the d file, because if Andrea was to trade, rook d8 is coming. So I'm thinking, oh, I'll just invade with my knight, which I'm defending through the black rook with my rook on d1, and my bishop on g2 is attacking. If she trades, I still have e6 defended. Everything's good. Right after I make that move, I realize I hung my knight on g5. And she spotted it. Rook takes g5. And I think the broadcast was not following this game, but I wish they were. I think they were looking at other games because, again, I had this tournament in the bag at this point. So I would have loved to see their reaction to knight d6. But as soon as she took my knight, and really as soon as I realized the knight was hanging, I shifted mentally. We've been talking a lot about this, and this is what I hope you take away from these games I'm showing you. And I know I'm spending a lot of time, but I shifted mentally and I thought, all right, well, this tournament has been going very, very well for me. There's no reason that should not continue to happen in this final game. Everything up till this blunder was according to plan. And I still have a lot of momentum. I'll come back to that word, momentum, as a result of how I played this opening going into the middle game, especially on the clock. She's at 30-ish seconds. I got a minute and 30. I didn't think objectively my position was all that bad still, even though I knew it's probably -2 or something. Let's see what the engine says. Oh, not even. I can play knight f7 here. Interesting. And I guess with the attack on the rook, rook d8, maybe I saw that after the game when I looked at it briefly. I don't remember. But anyways, my mentality was I'm going to play as if nothing happened. And I'm going to continue playing for the momentum that I feel I've been generating all tournament. There's no reason that shouldn't continue. So trade, and then rook d7, hit the knight, hit the pawn. I get to win one pawn. And, you know, we can count the pawns here. I've got 2 pawns for the piece, this annoying pawn on e6. And she's got far less time on the clock. Probably around here, black should find some way to coordinate. It's not even simple to do, just thinking about it. But maybe something with bishop f6 and king g7. Even if she were to give the a pawn, I might have looked to do that. Or maybe play a5 first. Defend that pawn with the rook. Maybe we can see what the computer likes. Yeah, bishop d4. That's another way to defend the pawn. You could even come back to b6 there. She plays bishop c3 first, though. And I think those type of moves are risky because that bishop's kind of floating out there on an undefended square, right? So I played rook d1, covering the d4 square, and also hinting at rook d7. She goes rook e5. I go rook d3, hitting the bishop. Now rook f3 is also on the agenda, which I get to play, forcing black's king to move. Black goes king e8. Now bishop h3. I wanted to keep this e-pawn under a lot of circumstances. Yeah, and she plays bishop e6, so she manages to stabilize the queen side a little bit. But now rook f7 lands. Rook f7 gets into the picture. Bishop c7, trying to break up the rooks. Rook takes a7. And time is getting very low here for black. c5. And I think around here, yeah, the computer says I'm doing very well. So presumably black lost the lion's share of the advantage somewhere in that sequence. Yeah, maybe that bishop maneuver wasn't the greatest. But there's objectively maybe one more chance that Andrea has. It's very tough to spot, though, in a blitz game. So she loses another pawn. Now I have 3 pawns for the piece plus this existing pressure. I swing my rook over to h7, threatening rook h8. And I think she had to find the move rook h5 at this point. That might be the only move. Yeah, rook h5. Guarding against rook h8, putting a little stopgap between the rook and the bishop, and that would have held on. That would have saved the game, objectively speaking. Who knows what would happen in the blitz game, but that way she could have traded a pair of rooks. Still highly unclear. I mean, who knows? I guess I should probably stop the c-pawn, but black did have that for the record. But she went king f8, and I got this check-in. King g7 runs into the trade of rooks, followed by taking the bishop, and everything collapses. So knight g8 is forced, but here I saw that I had e7. hitting the king and opening up the attack towards the rook on c8. King g7 wouldn't help here either. I guess maybe black can get to this situation. Maybe black can struggle on here a little bit, but they're down 2 pawns. But yeah, she took on e7. I took on c8. Now I'm up material. Exchange plus pawns, and this was a cleanup job from here. So I was happy I was able to overcome the knight blunder here. Just being open to continuing the momentum, trying to continue as if nothing happened, really. I didn't react emotionally to this. I didn't pull a face even, I think. I just was like, okay, I lost a bishop, but I still got some stuff going here, and I also have more time on the clock. So that's how I finished with 9 out of 9 in this Naroditsky Memorial, first annual Naroditsky Memorial Creator Invitational. Here are the final standings if you're curious. So yeah, Levy scored 7 out of 9. Danny Rensch, big shout out to Danny. Danny and I were the oldest competitors in the field. I think he's 40. I'm still 39 for one more month. So basically 40. Lee Chess lists me at 40. But yeah, he did really well. Danny is a great player. If he played more, which I'm sure he'd want to do, he'd be rocking and rolling. And again, Dina scored 5.5 out of 9, overperformed. She actually gained a huge amount of rating points. Aman underperformed pretty severely. I was surprised by that, but maybe some fatigue from the other day. But huge credit to him for beating Javakir Sindarov. So yeah, this was a 2-hour video, guys. Thank you for sticking with this. I know this is long, but I wanted to give you my full thought process about this tournament, and especially those psychological and meta aspects, because, I mean, I don't expect you to remember the chess stuff we talked about in this. I probably won't even remember much of the chess stuff that I just spent 2 hours going over. But these psychological things and these mindset shifts are what might stick with you and what might help you in your own games. So go back to the beginning of the video, and if you need to replay certain sections, just remember, the shorter the time control, the more you have to think about momentum, playing optimistically, playing practically. If you can force your opponent to think, and you can get into 2-result situations where there's not much risk for you and you can play moves quickly, I think those are golden. And I try to seek those out whenever I can. If you can have a few opening surprises here and there, that can't hurt. Being well rested always pays. If you're playing a tournament and you need to take a bye or two, and that's allowed, don't at all feel bad or feel ashamed to do that, because you need to create the conditions within legal bounds that best favor you. And getting a little more rest and knowing your limits is something we should all aspire to do. Okay. Thanks again to the Charlotte Chess Center for organizing this tournament. It was an honor. I received the trophy. There was a very nice trophy. I received this from Elena Naroditsky, Daniel's mother. She was on hand for the entire event. I talked to her a little bit, and I can't imagine what she's going through, but it was really nice to see her there. Nice to see a few members of the Naroditsky family there. We'll always keep Daniel in mind. He's going to be someone that I always associate with many things in chess, and I'm glad there's a tournament to remember him. And I'll be back next year to hopefully defend my title in this Creator Invitational, and hope to see many of you there too. So, and thanks again to everyone who came up and said hello. What was really cool, final thing I'll leave you guys with, was seeing the fans at the Creator Invitational, because there was maybe like 100 spectators, and I signed so many boards. I got to sign the D5 square a bunch throughout this tournament. More people were coming up to me and asking me to sign boards as I got on a win streak here. So it was really, really special for me to hang out with you guys, see how jazzed up you were about chess and taking in the Naroditsky Memorial, this Creator Tournament, all the events. It was really a unique experience. So can't wait for next year. Okay, thanks for watching this. Thanks to all my opponents in this one. And I will try to resume some regular videos here. I might make a Chessiverse video recapping some of the progress we made on Chessiverse in the near future, if you're curious about that. That's my startup that I've been working on for over a year. Hope you're having a great summer, or whatever season it is where you're at. Let me know if you guys have any questions or comments. Enjoy. I'll see you guys again soon. Thanks, guys. Bye.